Hey, and welcome to episode 26 of Monster Kid Radio, the podcast where we celebrate the classic and sometimes the not-so-classic genre cinema of yesteryear. I am Derek M. Cook, and I'm excited to bring you part 2 of our talk about Vincent Price here on Monster Kid Radio. You all picked it when you voted for Vincent Price in the poll over at the Facebook page. You guys and gals wanted to hear my top 3 Vincent Price movies. I didn't want to do it by myself, so we have Larry Underwood, a.k.a. Dr. Gangrene, joining us this week to talk about Vincent Price. And in this episode, you're going to hear my top 3 and his top 3 Vincent Price films. Let's kind of talk a little bit about Vincent Price's influence and impact on horror, pop media, pop culture, all of that. And maybe even talk a little bit about Johnny Depp and a sitcom from the 70s. You'll have to listen to it to find out what we say. The song that you heard at the top of the show was Borgo Pass from the band The Coffin Daggers. It appears on their album Monsters from the Id. It appears by permission of The Coffin Daggers. You can find out more about them over at coffindaggers.com. You'll hear the song in its entirety at the end of the show. Make sure you head over to monsterkidradio.net for all of the information about this episode and previous episodes, links to the various bands that have appeared on the show in the past, as well as our contact information. I mentioned our Facebook presence. We have both a page and a group, and I appreciate everybody who's liked the page and joined the group, and I appreciate all the reviews we've been getting on iTunes. We got another one since this last episode went out. Really appreciate it. If you haven't done so yet and you are an iTunes user, we'd love a review over there. Of course, you can listen to us on Stitcher Radio through your smartphone, or stream us directly from our website, or our behind-the-scenes bare bones website at monsterkidradio.libsyn.com. You know, I'm excited to get right into this top 3 list, so here we go. Part 2 of our Vincent Price discussion with Larry Underwood. Let's do it. A moment ago, you said we could just sit here and talk about this is my favorite movie. Well, we're about to do that because we've got a top 3 countdown of our favorite Vincent Price films.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I'm going to go first so that, you know, when we get down to the end, you get the last say with your number 1. But we're going to count down from 3 to 1. My number 3 is one that I wouldn't necessarily consider a straight-up horror movie, but I still love it because I think Price does an amazing job as an actor in this film. Plus, it's an interesting little story. It's 1946's Shock.
Hello, this is Mrs. Stewart. Did my husband come in? No, thank you.
I'm Dr. Cross, Mrs. Stewart. I'm your friend. I'm here to help you. This delusion is quite common among mental cases in an institution of this sort.
Are you trying to tell me my wife is out of her mind?
I'm going to try to find something that will convince her that she's insane.
You don't understand. There's nothing the matter with me. I want the police. That doctor's a murderer.
You go back to bed and we'll call him.
Don't talk to me as if I were crazy. I'm telling you the truth.
I like the story to begin with, but I really like this movie because I feel like it gives Price an opportunity to play everything. You know, he's the killer, he's the doctor, he's the healer, he's the guy who's trying to get away with it, he's the adulterer, he's got a lot of regret. It's all over the place, and I really enjoyed the movie. The print that I just recently saw is awful because it's a public domain film, which means you're going to see some terrible prints of it. But I really enjoyed the film. Are you familiar with Shock?
I am, and I was going to bring up the fact that being a public domain film, that's sort of one that a lot of horror hosts tend to be a mainstay, tend to show that one a lot. And it is really good. It's one of the ones that I always list as, there's a handful of public domain movies that are above and beyond the rest, Night of the Living Dead and blah, blah, blah. But that's definitely right up there on my list of the top of the PD flicks. And it is a really solid movie. He plays it. He is a villain. He is a bad guy. He is a murderer in it. It's more of a murder mystery or a thriller.
Yeah, it's kind of thriller. There might be some noir elements to it, but it's kind of a thriller, psychological kind of thing. I mean, it wasn't by Universal, but I think it was by Fox. So, it's 1940s Fox, so it has that kind of thriller, dark vibe to it. By all rights, it probably shouldn't be a public domain film because it was produced by Fox, but, it's every once in a while a movie slips through. Did you ever show it?
Yes, I did show that one. So that's a good one.
So that's my number 3. I really like it. So easy to get your hands on, and maybe you can find a good print. What's your number 3?
My number 3, I'm going to go with William Castle's House on Haunted Hill.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Vincent Price, and you're invited to my party in the house on Haunted Hill, where so far the ghosts have murdered only 7 people. So won't you come and make it 8? You'll see human heads without bodies. Mysterious pools of blood dripping from the ceiling. The walls move slowly in against you. Don't try to escape, you can't. You ready, dear?
No.
Are you ready, dear?
Yes. Damn you.
The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me in the house on Haunted Hill? Hurry, or you'll be late for your own funeral.
To me, it's sort of the quintessential Vincent Price film. When I think of Vincent Price, I think of him, in the suit and introducing the host of the evening and, again, the dapper image and just the whole setup. I'm a huge William Castle fan, as most classic horror movie lovers are. Mm-hmm. And this is one of his best known and one of those he's most famous for. It's one that there's some question whether it's in the public domain. I know a lot of horror hosts do show it. It's technically, I think it may have slipped out of public domain, but whatever. It's a great movie, and you can definitely find copies of it all over the internet if you've never seen it. It's got the classic old dark house, haunted house stuff, and it's one that William Castle did in his gimmicks, Emergo, where he had a plastic skeleton fly out over the audience just as the skeleton emerged from the pit of acid in the movie. So
yeah.
Good stuff,
This is the classic image of Price in the suit with the cigarette, with the thin little mustache, with the hair just right. I mean, it is the quintessential image of Vincent Price, and
it really is.
Because it was public domain, I wasn't aware that somebody might have emerged with the rights for that.
Well,
but
I think
it's easy
Wade Williams and a couple other guys are claiming that they own it, and there's some question now. I was talking with the owner of Alpha Video about this recently, that there is some question. I mean, it's probably still okay to use it, but it looks like it's one of those it's kind of on the radar to be pulled off at some point, that someone's trying to claim ownership. This happens every so often that someone will claim that they own something, and if they can prove it, then there's a credit to Wade Williams in the back of Ed Wood he claims he owns Plan 9 from Outer Space. Whether he really does or not, who knows? But he's somewhat litigious, so people tend to steer clear when he says he owns things.
And this could spin off into a whole different kind of conversation that I actually think it'd be good to have you on for about public domain films, because I'm working with a film company as well right now who has had dealings with various companies who think movies are public domain and, well, they're not, and that sort of thing, which it's fascinating to me. Bottom line, though, as far as this conversation goes, if you can find House on Haunted Hill right now, grab it.
Yeah, it's in a whole bunch of the box sets. I mean, you can get it in which again would play into the theory of it being public domain. It's in a lot of those box sets. It's on YouTube. It's on archive.org. Right. You can find it anywhere right now. So definitely go watch it. It's a fun one. What did you think of the remake? I didn't care for it. Really? Yeah, no. Didn't care much for it at all. What were your thoughts about Jeffrey Rush's portrayal of the Vincent Price character? I'm a Jeffrey Rush fan. I like the guy. I think he has tremendous range. I think he's a great actor. He was okay. He just was a little flat for me, personally. I don't know. I don't know who you cast in that role, really. Whoever... That's true. Does that role almost has to do a total different approach to make it work, because anybody that tries to just reproduce what Price did is going to come off as either campy or second rate. I mean, you can't replicate it. So I would have kind of spun it totally differently. I don't know.
So that character should have been more of a Gangrene type than a Vincent Price type. Is that what we're saying?
No, definitely. I don't know about that.
All right. Well, my number 2, talking about Corman, talking about Price, and people who know me know that I have a huge love for all things Lovecraft. So I'm going to go The Haunted Palace.
You are invited to an open house where horror will be your host. The Haunted Palace. You, who find a kind of macabre joyousness in the horrifying, will enjoy yourselves as in ecstasy in The Haunted Palace. Starring Vincent Price, a being who lived and died and lives again.
I'll not have my fill of revenge until this village is a graveyard.
And intriguing Deborah Paget, whose appealing beauty inflames the blood of the bloodless.
Charles, please.
Well, I've been very busy, but I'm back now.
Oh, no!
The whole night before.
His violent, torturous passions inflict both pain and terror. Lon Chaney, carrying on a family tradition of masterful motion picture horror, while the strange and feared new master of the Haunted Palace reaches for the skeleton of one long dead.
You see? He's taken her mind, her soul, just like the others.
Really, this is outrageous. Night onward, you shall bear my curse.
Burn him!
Surely after all these years, I'm entitled to a few small amusements.
You got Vincent Price in there as Charles Dexter Ward. It was originally publicized as an Edgar Allan Poe story, but it's really a Lovecraft piece. It's based on a Lovecraft story. You've got Lon Chaney Jr. in there. It's got some great music. I'm a huge fan of this film. I think the colors and the cinematography of this thing is just fantastic. The extras all look great. The background makeup looks great. Huge fan of The Haunted Palace. So that's my number 2.
Oh, it's good. I watched it last night, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah.
Found it. Yeah, I found a copy on VHS for $2.50. So
yeah,
I scooped it up and came on and was like, I'm going to rewatch that and see if maybe I want to put it on my top 10 list. And, I did a top 10 Vincent Price countdown on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so that series is there if people want to see it. That one's not on my top 10 list. It could easily be on my top 10 list. The thing about a top 10 list for me is that it could change, honestly, from day to day. I mean, It's really top 10 at the moment. I like so many of his movies. And that one I really like because it's a Lovecraft tie-in. You do have Lon Chaney Jr. in it, although it's a smaller role. He doesn't really get to do much, but it's nice to see him. It's nice to see the two of them together.
Yeah. I talked about this when we talked about the Rolling Stone top 20 best monster movies of all time list a couple of weeks ago, and it's so hard as monster movie fans. I don't find this with like people who love romances or historical dramas or whatever, but there's something about us monster kids where we just cannot make up our damn mind. We try to put together a top 10 list, and we might have one or two that's always right there, but then from day to day, from moment to moment, well, I like this one better today. I think this one belongs here, and I'm going to take this one off and shuffle it around. It's impossible, and I'm sure if we were recording this tomorrow, my top 3 list will probably change.
Easily could. Although I am sticking pretty much to what I did on YouTube on my list. That one, unfortunately, did not make my top 3.
Well, that's okay. I still like it, but
But I like it too. Just a number 20 Vincent Price film is still higher than number 1 on a lot of other people's lists. So.
Oh, so you put it down at number 20?
No, I wouldn't put it that low.
Come on now. I mean, I know 10, we're friends, but
top 10 or 12 for sure.
Well, what's your number 2?
My number 2, I'm going to go with Witchfinder General from 1968.
With the tranquility of rural England shattered by civil war, evil was spawned at a time of strife in the land.
Take him, Stern. Look for the devil's marks upon him. Right. Help it, you two.
Hounding the innocent in violence and terror, this evil man showed no mercy in the pursuit and interrogation of his victims. He was called the Witchfinder General. And amidst the horror of the witch hunt, a story of tender young love.
Didn't your uncle just say you must hurry to bed?
He did.
And isn't he a wise man?
He is.
But even their innocence is cruelly corrupted by the vile touch of the Witchfinder General.
My motive in coming here was to find the truth.
Vincent Price is the Witchfinder General. Lust and greed were his only gods.
The money from the magistrate. 9 guineas in silver. Good. Now we can leave.
Ian Ogilvy as Richard Marshall. He stood alone against the forces of devilish destruction.
And 'tis in thy sight, O Lord, that I hereby swear I shall not rest from the pursuit of his murderers till they stand before thee, ready to answer to thee for their sins.
Rupert Davies as John Lowes.
Master Marshall, welcome.
Patrick Wymark as Oliver Cromwell.
Amongst the most pleasurable aspects of victory, gentlemen, is the opportunity it affords to reward valor. It ranks almost with good food.
And Wilfrid Bramble.
And what line of business might you be in?
God's business. Witch finding.
Witch finding. Oh, that's nice. That's very nice.
And introducing Hilary Dwyer as Sarah. Filmed in authentic detail and photographed with piercing realism against the actual background of peaceful villages and quiet countryside. Never has England looked so beautiful, yet been so violent.
I'm your man friend. John Stern, they call me.
Man's inhumanity to man portrayed on the screen so vividly that you flinch, so real that you too will fear the Witchfinder General. Be the first to see it, be the first to talk about it. The Witchfinder General.
Vincent Price, this is easily one of his top performances he ever pulled off. There's no camp in this movie whatsoever, and that's exactly at the behest of the director Michael Reeves. He plays the real-life Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins, a man who in Europe, in England during I guess it was the British Civil War or something along those lines, used kind of the chaos of the moment to he went on a crusade against witchcraft, and he tortured and killed, some people say as many as 300 women over the period of time that he was doing this. I mean, it puts the Salem witch trials and what stuff that went on in Boston way to shame. I mean, this guy was a bad dude, and that's what the movie's about. The movie was a little controversial because of the amount of violence in it. And I mean, there's a rape in the movie. There's a lot of violent acts in the movie. You know, there's a lot of torture scenes. And it's a brutal little movie, and Price he just plays one of the most evil roles of his career in this. Mm-hmm. Really gets a chance to show off his acting, and the director stayed on his ass to keep the camp out. I mean, he was they did not get along during the making of this movie. There's a lot of history recorded on this movie, a lot that you can read about and find out behind the scenes on this movie. It's one of those that has been really well researched, and it's fascinating to go back and kind of read the struggle that went on between Price and Reeves during the making of this movie. And they butted heads from day one. Reeves was being a real ass. He did not want Price in this role originally. He wanted Donald Pleasance. And then when the studio forced Price on him, he was determined to kind of make life difficult for Price. So it's interesting, but you can't argue the end result because it's a great film.
It just had a Blu-ray release, let's see, over in the UK, I don't think last year, maybe the year before. It wasn't too long ago. And the Blu-ray looks phenomenal. It looks great. It's got both versions of the film. It was released as The Conqueror Worm at one point. I don't know, was that the American title and then Witchfinder General was the UK title?
Yeah, they stuck the name of the Poe poem, Conqueror Worm, on there for They said they were trying to tie it in with the Corman Poe series of films. So they threw that title on there. Although I really doubt anybody knew that was a Poe work. Conqueror Worm. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with the movie. It had nothing.
No.
There's a bit of narration by Price. I believe it's by Price where he's reading the poem, but that's it. And that's whatever. I like it as Witchfinder General. I like it so much that it's actually my number one. Witchfinder General is my number one. So I'm sitting here just nodding along as you're talking about how great it is. It's probably the closest Vincent Price ever came to doing a Hammer style film, because it is that kind of that era. There's a little bit of gothicness in there. It's a costume piece. It's brutal, like you said. It's brutal, especially at the end. I mean, that
ending, man, it just is like a punch in the forehead. I mean, it really is just kind of like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's not a happy, tied up with a bow ending at all.
It's a fierce ending. And I think the conflict between Reeves and Price, like you said, you can't argue with the end result. I don't know if there was a tension on set, if it just made Price that much more angry that he could funnel into his character. But, man, it's such a great film, and Price is not the guy that I first saw on The Muppet Show with Kermit the Frog in this thing. I mean, he is an evil dude, and from what I'm gathering, probably the furthest away from Vincent Price's real personality is any role he's ever played. But, man, it's such a great film, and the music's wonderful. This was released not by Hammer, not by Amicus, but by one of the other, Trigon. Is that who put that one out?
Not sure.
Yeah, one of the UK studios that was trying to find their way in the wake of Hammer. And if people haven't had a chance to see it, and you have the ability to play a Blu-ray from the UK, I don't know what region it is, I highly recommend you check out that Blu-ray because it's just phenomenal.
The director stayed on his case. And like I said, this is well documented that every time Vincent would start slipping into one of his kind of, his campy little mannerisms, the director would just stop and go, "Stop it. You're doing it again. Stop it." And he would just rode him, mercilessly. And, had Price done his campy routine, the movie would still be a good movie. It would just be really different, and it would not have the impact, the emotional impact, I think, that it does now. It would still be an enjoyable movie, but it would not be probably one of the top 3 movies.
It wouldn't be my number one.
Yeah, had he not played it straight.
Agreed. Agreed. And the other performers in the movie are great too, but it's so hard, I would think, to be in a Vincent Price movie, especially come the 50s and 60s, because Vincent Price is just so good. For better or worse, I'm sure he casts a shadow over everything that, is going on around him. So, I'm sure it was tough to be a co-star of his, but the rest of the cast in this thing is great as well. It's just such a good movie.
Well, apparently when they had it planned for Donald Pleasance, he was going to be kind of like a bumbling, inefficient type Witchfinder General. He was not going to be the, just the ruthless kind of stern business first, everything, that Vincent Price is. That they had it totally planned with a different type character. But then once they got Price forced on them, they kind of went back and rewrote the script. So it would have been different had Pleasance been in the role as well.
I can't imagine that. I mean, I like Donald Pleasance, but God, I can't imagine that movie with him in that role. I mean, even if he was kind of a bumbling kind of, wow.
Yeah, it would be interesting, but very different.
I'm having such a disconnect. I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. What is your number one?
My number one is a film I mentioned earlier, House of Wax, 1953.
This theater is pleased to announce the opening soon of the most astounding motion picture since motion pictures began.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. It really is. And it's kind of got a little bit of a fairy tale quality to it. You got Charles Bronson added in the mix, so there's another extra plus. He plays his mute assistant Igor, so big plus there. It's a remake of an earlier horror movie, Mystery of the Wax Museum from '33. This one, Price, he's not really doing the campy thing so much. It's still a little bit more straightforward, but he's the owner of a wax museum that's burned down, and he's rebuilt it and come back and has a unique way of creating really, really lifelike wax figures. I guess it's okay to spoil it,
Yeah.
It's a pretty old movie, and everybody should have seen it. But spoiler alert, of course, he's using dead bodies and covering them with wax and putting them in his in his museum. So, but that one is definitely probably my favorite. And I think the memory of seeing it in the theater in 3D as a kid also probably is another reason why it's one of my favorites, fond memory of that. And, but it's a really solid film.
It is. I mean, it surpasses its 3D gimmick so quickly because it's such, I mean, it's a mystery story, but, like you said, there's a fairy tale element to it. It's one of Charles Bronson's earliest film roles, isn't it? I mean, he wasn't even calling himself Charles Bronson at the time. It was Charles Bakinski, which may be his birth name. I don't really know. It's also got Carolyn Jones, Morticia.
Mm-hmm.
From the
Adams is in it.
I know, yeah. So, I mean, you've got more than just Price. Again, I'm sure it was terrible to be a co-star of Price in anything, but, they all hold their own. And
well, I don't know if it's as bad as being a co-star of Props Cushing, though, who's trying to steal every scene and one-up everybody with playing with whatever's hand. Hey
now. I know I asked earlier who would win in a fight between Cushing and Price, but you keep this up, you and I might have to, I'm saying, who would win in a fight, Gangrene or No, man. No, I hear you. I hear you. I'll accept that. But
it's funny.
But no, House of Wax is good. Now, the original is a Fay Wray and Lionel Atwell production, which is a early color film, which I think is great. It's Fay Wray doing her Scream Queen thing, and Lionel. The makeup's good. At the end when she breaks away the face and sees his burnt up face. Speaking of face disfiguration or disfigurements, neither one of us mentioned Dr. Phibes. I'm kind of surprised.
No. Yeah. Well, and I was talking to my son about this last night. They're in my top 10, but for me personally, the reason why it's not one of my top 3 is only because Vincent really doesn't get a chance to use that voice and to emote emotionally like he does in his other films, because he's blank-faced in it, and he's speaking through the little wire in his neck, and it's the monotone delivery. And I do really like the setup and just the overall horror feel of it, because he is reveling in the gore in this one and killing off people one at a time. But really the movie where he does that and gets a chance to act better is Theater of Blood.
Yep.
Which is almost the same as Phibes. It's just he's not a monster in it. He's just a spurned actor who is getting revenge on critics, which I love the idea of getting revenge on critics, because so many critics are such assholes, man, that I think every actor out there probably feels like they would love to do this to some of their critics. And by all accounts, that's one of Price's favorite films was Theater of Blood. And that's one that a lot of people probably don't or haven't seen that they should. You asked me earlier about which one I would recommend. That's definitely on my list of must-see Price films. But yeah, the Phibes movies, that's the only reason why. I love the costume design. I love the mask that he wears.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that, unfortunately, he doesn't get to emote in it enough for me.
Well, Theater of Blood, I think, wouldn't every actor really enjoy a role in which they get to go after their critics? I mean...
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And he gets to spout off Shakespeare, so he was chewing scenery in that one, and... He was really having fun with that one.
We were talking at the very beginning of this about his voice and his narration. I would be remiss, and I'm sure I'll catch a little flack if I don't mention that he was one of the voices in the Disney film The Great Mouse Detective, which... my friend Scott, you guys have heard him on the show before. He's a huge Disney fan, does the Disney Indiana podcast. So I've got to mention that so that I keep Scott in my good graces.
Well, that was another one of Price's favorite roles. It was Ratigan. Was that the name of the character?
I believe so.
I've never seen that movie, actually, but I think he played a rat in it, and I think his name was Ratigan or something like that. But yeah, I think he really enjoyed that one also. And I remember seeing him a lot as a kid on... it would always seemed like the episode would always replay of the Brady Bunch with him in it.
What was he in the Brady Bunch?
That.
No, I don't know if I have.
Yeah, he plays this. It's in the episode where they go to Hawaii. The family goes to Hawaii. And
he's in the Hawaii episodes?
Yeah, he's in. I think he comes in the very end of the first episode and the beginning of the second episode. He's a hermit in a cave.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's another one that I remember.
I mean,
seeing.
I think everybody knows the Hawaii episodes. It's a little cursed little tiki doll or whatever. But Price is in that, huh?
Yeah, funny.
Awesome. Well, I think Vincent Price is, a legacy. He left a legacy in these movies and television appearances and such. Is there of Vincent Price today? Is there somebody out there now who's kind of taken on that mantle that you can think of? I can't think of any, but
no, certainly not. I mean, for a while there, people thought that Johnny Depp was kind of going to be, the horror guy, but he's become a punchline now with overdone makeup and just the whole. I'm so over the Depp and Burton thing. It's just I don't know. I can't think of anybody right now. I mean, there's a lot of actors out there who are pigeonholed into the horror shtick, but nobody with kind of the resonance of a Price or a Karloff. There's nobody out there that I can think of that really. What about you? Can you think of anyone?
Well, I want to revisit the Depp thing here in a second, but what about like a Robert Englund type? I mean, he's got a distinct voice. He's got a distinct face. He doesn't have the same gravitas, I suppose, that Vincent Price had. But I mean, and I mentioned this when I was doing my Rolling Stone reaction piece. I can't think of anybody post mid '80s anyway that is kind of immediately recognizable as a boogeyman. Because there's a handful of them out there, but not in the mainstream, I think Robert Englund's probably the closest we got, and that's about, 30 years ago.
Your current crop of actors who are making the scene were almost minor player actors who have been elevated. Your Bill Mosleys, your Sid Haigs, your Kane Hodder. These guys are the ones that you're seeing in all the movies now. Who are actors now. Tom Savini's an actor now. He won't even talk about his makeup stuff anymore. Good luck trying to get him to talk about that stuff. He won't do it. He just wants to be an actor, be known as first and foremost as an actor, and that's fine. But it's kind of interesting that the current crop of guys, those are the ones that are in all the horror movies now, but they weren't star level actors, to begin with. And so I don't know, man. I like Tony Todd a lot.
Oh, he's got a voice too.
About him.
Oh, and he's got a voice.
Has a great voice.
Yeah. Although I bet if Tom Savini put out a cookbook, people would buy it.
I bet he would. I bet they would.
Yeah. So you mentioned Depp. I don't know how solid this is, but at one point Depp was talking about remaking Dr. Phibes. What are your thoughts on that?
My thought is that Depp and Burton have picked every single movie that they adored as kids and are using their star power to remake them. And every one of them without fail is a disaster. I mean, it's always, every one of them, Planet of the Apes, Depp wasn't in Planet of the Apes, but I mean, look at all the movies that they've remade. They just, Dark Shadows. I mean, I don't care for any of it. It's not for me. And I cannot imagine Johnny Depp trying to pull off a Vincent Price role. He just doesn't have the chops for it. But that being said, maybe that's the one that he could do because he would not have to act so much. He would not have to emote. But holy shit, they've got to stop the stupid costume designs that they keep throwing. It's like they pick the most insulting and just downright garish costume design that they can possibly force on Depp, and they make him wear just this ridiculous makeup, and he does that same little overacting thing with his mannerisms that it just ruins it for me. It's like, I've seen this, I saw Edward Scissorhands, and now you've done it in Charlie Chocolate Factory. I'm on and on. I mean, it's just stop. So if they could stick with the original costume design, maybe that would be one he could pull off. I think Depp's a great actor.
Yes.
And I think Burton can be a great director. I don't know that he's done anything I particularly care for in years, though. Big Fish was the last thing that I watched that I really went, man, that was a really good film, and I've rewatched. I'm not going to go back and rewatch Dark Shadows anytime soon. It took something that was serious and dark and a gothic
right. No, I know what you mean.
You know, and he turned it into this lighthearted, farcical comedy that just, I don't know, it's just, man, it's not for me.
But we kind of went off the joy of Vincent Price. So I want to end on a high note. I agree with you, though. I do agree with you 100%. I think Johnny Depp needs a mascara intervention. I think Depp and Burton need to have a nice cooling off period and maybe break up a little bit for a little while. I would be down with that because
maybe if Burton could do, or maybe Burton needs someone to do with him what Vincent Price had done in Witchfinder General. Maybe someone needs to be right there on Burton's heels, and every time he starts doing his Burton, he'll go, stop it, you're doing it again, stop it, and smack him on the hand and make him do the serious, you know? I mean, could you imagine if Burton really tried to focus on doing a dark horror piece?
Uh-huh.
You know,
that'd be amazing.
Forget the camp, forget the schlock, make a scary damn movie, Tim. That would be awesome. He's a great director.
Yep.
I would love to see that.
Yep. Stop it, Tim. You're doing it again, Tim. All right, man. Well, Vincent Price, I think Johnny Depp is no Vincent Price. I can't think of anybody who is filling the Vincent Price roles. Fortunately, he left us hundreds of hours of entertainment and films and apparently the Brady Bunch to enjoy.
I'll tell you, the actor I think it has the most gravitas that's working today is Anthony Hopkins. And Hopkins, maybe put him in a Price role, see what happens. That could be interesting.
Wow. Totally different body types. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to imagine Hopkins with the little mustache. You know, this is
he can pull anything off.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. So a House of Wax remake with Anthony Hopkins. What do you think?
I think I'd be down for seeing that.
Okay, better than the Paris Hilton one?
Yeah. Where the actual house is wax. I mean, really? Are you kidding me? The house is wax. Wow.
Well, it's right there in the title, you know, it's the House of Wax. All right, man. So if people want to find you online, how do they do that?
drgangrene.com.
And you've got
LarryUnderwood.blogspot.com is my other.
That's where I was going for. And you've got books, Kindle books available on Amazon, part of your 13 for 13 series.
Yes, been writing a series of 13 short stories during the year 2013, kind of a little personal project that I set up for myself just to see if I could do it. You know, 13 stories is not a lot by writer standards. I know there's a lot of writers out there who turn out 13 stories in a month, but that's not me, you know? And so for me to do one a month is about right, you know? And it's been fun. It's been interesting. And not all of them were horror, interestingly enough. So, but most are.
No, I mean, you've got some horror ones. You've got a nice little sci-fi time travel one. I've been enjoying what I've read so far, so I'm going to make sure there's a link to your Amazon authors page as well in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net so people can check you out in multiple ways. You've got a YouTube channel, so you're all over the internet. If people want to find you, you're not hard to find.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for coming back to Monster Kid Radio, man. We'll have to have you back again.
Anytime. And just say the word.
And next time, Amicus films. We'll talk about Amicus. I promise.
Absolutely.
All right.
Big Amicus fan.
Well, I'm about to say something I don't think I would have ever thought I would say producing Monster Kid Radio, but I think when we're done recording, I'm going to go watch the Brady Bunch. You can find out everything you need to know about Dr. Gangrene at drgangrene.com, or of course go to monsterkidradio.net to follow the links to everything that he's got going on, his writing, his short stories, the Vincentennial countdown that he did on his website a couple of years ago, and the link to the Coffin Daggers. We'll get to that here in a second, but first I want to let you know that next week I think we're going to be visited again by Chris McMillan from The Shadow Over Portland. My plan is to discuss Godzilla with Chris, so fingers and tentacles crossed that's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, well, you know, we have other content that we can dive into. If there's something that you want to hear us talk about here on Monster Kid Radio, drop me a line, post it on Facebook, whatever. Hey, and don't forget our contest for the Matango Mini Bust by sculptor Tom Biegler. We talked about Matango with Tom in last week's episodes of Monster Kid Radio, and he has created a one-of-a-kind Matango Mini Bust to give away here on the show to a lucky listener of Monster Kid Radio. Here's how you enter. Email me at monsterkidradio@gmail.com the name of another killer vegetable movie. You make it up. It could be about, well, honestly, I can't think of anything more evil and bent on world domination than a mushroom because, well, I can't stand them. But if you can come up with a scary vegetable monster movie title and maybe a line or two about what it's about, email me at monsterkidradio@gmail.com with your name, your mailing address, and I'll throw you into the drawing for the Matango minibus by sculptor Tom Biegler. You'll get the minibus and a certificate of authenticity. The deadline for this contest is August 31st. We'll be announcing the winner in September. Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivations 3.0 Unported license. Of course, that does not extend to the song. The song is owned by the Coffin Daggers. It appears by permission of the band. It's Borgo Pass from the album Monsters from the Id. Talk to you next week.